Okay. Well, welcome to our Zoom session. My name is Lindsay Calarco. I'm the literacy coordinator. And go ahead, Patty.
I am Patty Chanel, and I am the math coordinator.
And we want to talk to you tonight about giving you some information about the screening assessments we're using with your children and just have an opportunity if you have questions for us. So, this is the first year since I worked in Thompson, and I think ever in Thompson, that we have sent home the screening results. So this is exciting and definitely information we want families to have. So we screen children 3 times a year: the beginning of the year, middle of year, end of year. Beginning of the year, we're usually looking end of September. The middle of the year is usually towards the end of January. And the end of the year is very end of April into May. End of year gets crazy because there's so many different things going on at the end of a school year. And the reason we use screeners, it's a very quick assessment. It's one-on-one with your child. They either sit like with me or Mrs. Chenille or some other reading specialists. It's maybe a maximum of 5 minutes out of their school day. So they're not missing a lot of instructional time. And it lets us identify strengths and weakness for your child as a grade level. It helps us adjust as classroom teachers, or if we notice even our curriculum, sometimes there's issues, so that we're really improving everybody's academic outcomes and we're catching things before they become bigger issues. One thing to keep in mind with a screener is it is just that it is a screener. It's one moment in time for them. So as always, there's variables because our kids are humans, not robots. They might not be feeling well that day, or they might not be focused. So just keep that into consideration too, as we're going through these assessments with you. Did you want to add anything else about the assessments, Mrs. Chenille?
I think you did a great job.
All right. Do you want to take it away with math and I'll keep my eye in the waiting room?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Okay, so in last school year, the 24-25 school year, we did a pilot for mathematics. We've been assessing the literacy piece for quite some time, but we brought math on board. Last year, we started in K through 2. We are using a platform called Forefront to collect all of our data. And we are conducting what's called a universal screener of number sense. And this is a good predictor of how children will perform with our core math curriculum as well as for future years of their math learning. This was a mid-year pilot. We wanted to be sure that it was a good fit for all of our students in the district. We were very pleased with the platform, so we decided to bring it on board for K through 4 this school year. The main reason that we chose the Forefront is because it integrates seamlessly with our core math program, which is Bridges in Mathematics, and will provide us with a complete picture of your child's understandings in mathematics and their mastery of specific concepts and the math standards at each grade level. So here on this slide, I have just a little smattering of some of the things that your children were asked. In the top right of the slide in grade 1, we asked them to start counting and not at grade 1, but at a specific number. We asked them to count by tens. We asked them to identify various numbers, as well as many other tasks. This is just a snippet. I gave a snippet also for grade 2. And I will tell you that as a district, one of the areas that a majority of our children need to work on is counting backwards. And I want you to think about counting backwards. If you're struggling with counting backwards, how are you ever going to be successful in doing basic subtraction? So this is a skill that's really important for our children. And then not to be outdone, I also provided a little snippet of the grade 4, which gets into some of the fractions. All right, next slide, Miss Lindsay.
I think you have the.
Oh, I have control over that. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
that's okay.
On the report that you got from us, you should have seen a cover letter. You should have seen a a letter that was specific to your child's math assessment, and it was broken into the standards or the skills that your child performed well. And then there were skills that your child may need some additional practice or could benefit from some additional practice. And at the bottom of that letter, there were 3 resources that as parents or guardians that you could use at home with your child. The very first one is called the Math Learning Center, and the Math Learning Center is actually the parent company of Bridges in Mathematics, and that is our core math program. So using that particular resource will give your child some very specific activities that coordinate with what they are doing in the classroom. So the link that I have here in this slide, you'll notice at the very end, at the end of that last slash, there is a 3. That specifies the grade. So this link is good for every single grade level. You just need to change that last number. So if I were to actually go to that resource, it's going to take you to the Math at Home section, and this one was for grade 3. And it will tell you or give you some very specific activities that you could work on at home with your 3rd grader or your 2nd grader, depending on that particular link. So let me stop sharing for 1 second and go back to our slides. Maybe. All right. Okay, it's been a while. We used to use Zoom all the time, and I felt like I was a pro at it, and now I'm having to redo here. Okay, so why can't I? Okay, here we go. I think I have it. Sorry, guys. All right. All right. And then the other 2 links are Math Anywhere. And then the 3rd one I really like because of the fact that we're doing this combined as math and literacy. And there are actually some bedtime stories that you could get in some reading with your child as well as mathematics combined. And that's called bedtimemath.org. And again, as long as you sign into our chat, for those of you that are arriving late, in the chat, if you would include your name and email address and your child's name, if you are interested in getting this PowerPoint, we can send it to you so that the links will be live. Does anyone have any specific questions surrounding the math piece?
I'm looking through the Zoom to see. I don't see anyone. You can always write in the chat too if something pops up. Keep an eye on that.
All right, then I am going to turn it over to Lindsay for the literacy piece.
Okay. There we go. We can leave that there. That's a sample. I'll explain that in a second. So what we use for literacy and what's pretty standard really across the state of Connecticut and even nationally, it's called DIBELS. And that's an acronym that stands for Dynamic Indicator of Basic Early Literacy Skills. And that's a report that you got home, and it has colored bar where your child falls. Above goal, goal. It might say strategic, which is in the yellow band, or red, which is intensive. An important thing to know with DIBELS is that there are multiple subtests and they're all timed. So your child has 1 minute to do it, and that's a big factor to keep that in mind. Your child is doing this one-on-one. They're not aware that they're timed. There's not a timer that goes off. We do it on an iPad to try to reduce some of that anxiety so that they're not hearing a buzzer going off. Let's see what else. So they're all timed tests, and then those subtests are compiled to give a composite score. So you might see that your child their composite, their overall might be yellow, and you might see that some areas might be green, and that's how those subtests they get put together. So that might explain some confusion there with that. There's a formula for how the different subtests are weighted to come out with that composite score. The different subtests change based on the grade level. So I am going to go over some of those subtests to give you an idea of what they're doing and why those areas are measured. I do want you to know that how this assessment determines where your child is falling is in comparison to over 10,000 other students nationally. So this is a norm test that they've used, they've researched it. And so think of it kind of like when you go to the doctor and they have that growth chart, and determining where your child falls is based in comparison to other children that age. All right, so with a screener, there are strengths and there are weaknesses. The good thing for us in education, it's quick. Your child's just a few minutes and it gives us an indicator. Sometimes that indicator can tell us there might be a need, and it was not necessary. Like maybe that child, there was a bee in the room and they were distracted for the minute. So those, there can be issues with it that we do have to sometimes look at. But it does a really, really good job at those early skills. Like, do they know their letters? Are they able to blend sounds to read words? But an area that Dibbles is not as great for is if there's underlying language issues or comprehension issues. It's not always great at picking that type of thing up. All right, so I'm going to go through the different subtests. This right here is letter naming fluency. And your children who are in kindergarten and first grade will do this. And you might say, well, why is my child maybe in the red there? I know they know all their letters, but keep in mind, it's time. So how many letters can your child name in a minute? And there's a goal score set for each time of the year. And that time, whatever it is for beginning of the year, there's an increase for the middle of the year. If your child is in second or third grade, they're going to see numbers and they have to say a number. This is like a sample, and then it goes to a big sheet like this of numbers. And the reason we're doing that is because what we're trying to tease out here is how your child can retrieve information that they know. So these children in second and third grade, they know their single digit numbers. But how quickly can they retrieve information that they have stored that they know to do a task with it? And some children process information slower. Well, that's going to impact their reading because they might be a slower reader. So kind of trying to tease out what's going on there so that we can better plan instruction for your child. All right, next slide, please, Mrs. Chanel. All right. Up in that top left-hand corner, those are make-believe words, nonsense words. On your sheet, it might be under decoding, and it is even sometimes listed as words recoded correctly. The reason we're doing make-believe words, and this is not something I would want you to practice at home. If you're reading with your child, I'd rather have them time spent reading real words. But this is really to make sure that if we're saying someone can read, that they're not just words that they have memorized. Because when you're younger in K in first grade, there's fewer words that you're seeing. And we don't want to miss a child who's only memorizing words and is not actually able to sound words out. So that's why we're using make-believe words here. The sample is pulled actually from second grade. In kindergarten and first grade, they're just short vowel words. And they have to just go ahead and read the words basically as quickly as they can while being correct. They get 2 scores from this: correct letters and correct words read. So for example, if a child just says lom, they would get 3 points for the letter sounds and they would get 1 word. Sometimes I'll go to the next word. A child might do this. N, e, g, reg. So they did the sounds correctly, so they got 3 sound points, but they wouldn't get that word correct. And that indicates a phonemic awareness issue. That's information for the reading specialist to kind of know, okay, this is how we need to support them, or the classroom teacher. Let's see. So words recoded correctly, this is done in kindergarten, first grade, second and third grade. Sometimes in third grade and second, we might have children who test out of this. If they do a passage and their score is so high, then we don't need to go to this because it's a proxy measure that we know that they can do this. Another assessment that's done in kindergarten through third grade is word reading fluency. So here we're looking at real words, and they're words that appear with high frequency. Some of these words you can sound out, and some of them are irregular and you can't sound out. For example, the word the E wouldn't be able to sound that out. However, they really only have 3 seconds before we'll kind of give them the word and say, why don't you go on to the next one? We want to know what they already have. And this is important because we want our children to have some words mapped automatically to support their fluency. Um, if a lot of time is spent on figuring out words and fluency and a lot of brain power, that does impact comprehension. Of course, first graders are still sounding out words. So if you have a first grader who's sounding out words, that's what they need to be doing right now. Okay, next slide, please. Oh, you know what I didn't put in here? For those of you who have oral reading fluency, which is first grade through fourth grade, actually, it's first grade through eighth grade, to be honest with you, if you have a middle schooler. They have to read a passage, and it's based on your grade level. They'll get different passages through the year, and they're going to get 2 scores on that. They're going to get an accuracy score. So what percent of the words do they read accurately? And then they're going to get a rate score. How many words can they read per minute? Accuracy is very important. That's what I look at first. Can they read the words? Okay, maybe they can't read as many as their peers can in a minute, but can they read the words? Because if they can't read those words with extended time, we know we have to like really back up, and they're not going to have access to grade level. So I really do look at those 2 things. And accuracy usually comes before that automaticity. They're reading those words accurately before they're reading them really quickly. So when you have a first grader and it sounds like they're sounding out those words, that's very appropriate for a first grader. They have to sound those words out before they kind of unitize them. As an adult reader, for example, when you look at the word snowman, it's as if you look at it and you know it automatically, but that's because at one point you did analyze that word, you did sound it out, and now you have it mapped. And that's what your first graders or younger readers are doing, that you're hearing, that sometimes can seem very laborious, but that's an important process. And then what we see here, this is a comprehension measure. Um, the only thing to keep in mind here is it's timed. There's 3 minutes to do this. So if you have someone who reads slower, like if their oral reading fluency is not in the green, it may look like their comprehension has an issue, but you need to keep in mind it may just be that their answers were correct, but they didn't do enough of it. Like they took them longer to read. So there's not really a comprehension issue. It's a reading rate issue. And these are the types of things that the teachers are teasing out so that we know how to best support your child. And it's called a maze, which is really upsetting to the kids when they open up the booklet and they realize it's not a maze that you have to try to get to the start and get out. But they read a passage and it's about every 7th word where they have to pick the word that's correct. And the tricky thing is, like in this line over here, the clue comes after the box. In the blank, he also takes a bus home. So someone who might be quick or impulsive might circle morning and not having looked at this clue at the end. And if if they have difficulty decoding the words with phonics, this would be a very challenging task. We do have the majority, about 98% of our students do this, unless there is a decision that would come from a meeting with a family, that we wouldn't do dibbles, but generally we do, even if we do know that it's challenging for them because it's so quick. And because even if it is challenging, there still sometimes is growth that we can compare from where they were the previous year. I think, Mrs. Chenille, you can take screen share down. Thank you. Oh, there was another component of the Dibbles. It's a vocabulary assessment. I like this one a lot, and you'll have that on your sheet. This was new as of last year. So the children, they do it on their computer. Kindergartners, we sit with them to do it because, especially think of a beginning year kindergartner, it's just too much and they're not really sure what to do. And they have to answer questions about words in different formats. Sometimes it's just giving the definition of the word. Sometimes it's answering a yes, no question about the word. And other times it's a fill in the blank. And what I have noticed for the majority of children who, if it's not green for vocabulary, it's It's more than just being able to know what the word is. Like, think of the word cluster. Okay. I asked the child, well, what is a cluster? Do you know what a cluster is? Yeah, is a cluster one or more than one? It's more than one, but it's integrating it when it's in a sentence. Um, that can be tricky for them when it's more than just the definition. So if I have one grape, do I have a cluster of grapes? Sometimes they get lost in the words. Or here's a great kindergarten example. It was about, it was a preposition. So can shoes be on a house versus can shoes be in a house? And one kid was like, well, they could be on the house if I threw them on the roof. So I'm just like, just pick, what do you think is most likely? So keeping in mind, these are screeners. I overall do find it, I'd rather get it where it looks like there is an issue and work with the kid and see there's no issue than the other way where we're overlooking issues, if that makes sense. Another thing I want to add about kindergarten is that overall, we do see a lot of red at this time in kindergarten. And it's not just unique to Thompson. It's a state, it's a national, well, I'm going to speak specifically to the state of Connecticut, but the state does still want us to conduct it at the benchmark window instead of waiting, because I had brought that to them. So I want you to keep that in your mind, and conferences are coming up. So you can talk about that with your teachers, your child's teacher as well. As far as recommendations go for you to do at home, the sheet that went home did offer some activities, but I just want to just say the number one thing you can do is talk to your child and read to your child. Talk to them as much as you can. When you're in the grocery store, if you watch a show, talk to them about that show. Hey, was that a tricky word? Talk about that word. And when you read to your child, it doesn't need to be something that they can read. In fact, I don't want it to be something that they can read, because think about what a first grader would be reading. I want them to be exposed to complex and rich language. When we talk and we use slang, we shorten words up, we all do, because that's just our natural way of conversing. But when you use a picture book, there's complex sentences, there's great vocabulary words. And I do notice that right now we're doing a lot of work to get our children to be able to read, but as they get older, there's more of a shift on comprehension. And even the sentence structure can be complicated for them. So one of the greatest things you could do is talking to your child and reading to your child. Don't be limited by what you read, thinking it needs to be readable at a first grade level. Go with their interests. Even in kindergarten, their kids are loving the Magic Tree House books read aloud to them. They love it. If your child has a specific interest, go for it. And if you need any help, Kim Flynn at our public library would love to help you out with that. So that is my main plug for reading and just discourse with your child. We're going to have some family engagement opportunities that you're going to be hearing about around vocabulary and comprehension. So keep an eye on that. Probably around November or so, we might have our first one. We don't have a date yet, but keep an eye in Mr. Prentice's newsletter for that. Okay, that was a lot of information. You will hear about dibbles and see dibbles until your child's in 8th grade. Let me know, is there any questions there? You may have like very specific questions. You can reach out to your teacher or to me. I might reach out to the teacher depending, or if they have a reading specialist, if you have very specific questions. And also, if you received a Title I letter that your child's receiving extra reading support, there's 3 reading specialists that would love to meet with you at conferences.
And the same goes for the math side. If you have specific questions, please feel free to reach out to either your classroom teacher or to me. I'm happy to entertain any questions that you might have.
I don't know, Mrs. Chanel, we must have done a great job, or we just made everyone glaze over because there's no questions. Um, if we put back up that PowerPoint, we made a survey. We would love your feedback. Being that this is our first year sending home the data like this and offering this session, it'll just help us in the future tailor things more to your needs, what you like, what we can change. We're really interested in getting that feedback. There you go. All right, fingers crossed that QR code works and that You know what I think I can do with the link? Can I?
Probably can put that link right in the chat as
Yeah,
well, so they can access it that way.
do it that way too, because if you're using your phone, it's hard to use a QR code.
Absolutely. And we have been recording, so this video will be posted on the district website as well.
Let me share what I'm going to double check to make sure that link I just put in there. Nope, it said something went wrong. Can you copy and paste it from our presentation? Oh, wait, I think I can. Hold on.
It's working.
It didn't work for me when I just typed. It worked for you?
Let me just see. Nope, something went wrong.
That's
All
what
right,
I got too. Okay, hold
we'll
on.
have
I
to
just
fix
copied
that.
and pasted it. Let's try that one. Okay, there we go. We're good now if you use the second one. I tried to type it by hand, but I must have made a
It's
mistake.
working. Yes. Okay. Perfect.
Oh, you're welcome for those of you writing. Thank you. Thank you all for joining us. And we appreciate your partnership. And we love working with your children.
Yes. Thank you for sharing them with us, and thank you for attending.
You're welcome.